Happy 4th of July from us here at the Sorare in the States podcast. You got any 4th of July plans here, Nashi?
No, actually, I'll probably have a few beers and knock it early. I got up early for the F1 race this morning, Silverstone. It's like a big race for the British. So I watched that.
There's a big crash in that race, right?
Yeah, it was a mad start. Yeah. The fella's all right, luckily in the end, but it was one of the worst ones in a while. He was like sliding along on the top of his upside down essentially and went over the barrier. So it was exciting. He came out all right, so that's good. But early start in California with a time difference.
Yeah, that was wild, definitely for sure. But yeah, it's a great American holiday, and we are happy to bring in a man who needs no introduction. If you don't know who Quinny is, we'll have a link to sign up for Sorare in the description of the podcast. But how are you today, Quinny?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure. Long-time listener, first-time caller, as they say.
There you go. Love it.
We're buzzing to have you, mate. I mean, only recently did I realize how involved and how well versed you are on the MLS. And we caught that video, we were talking about it earlier. You just put recently out a video about your sort of viewpoint of the MLS, like how you think it can grow, like what makes it different, what makes it better. And I really like what you were saying about the youth development, the youth process. And we talk about that a lot. Do you think that that's something that other leagues can kind of now leverage? Do you want to just elaborate a bit what you were saying about that? Because I thought that video was brilliant that you've done. And if people haven't seen it, I'd say check it out.
Well, I suppose the first time I became aware of it was like when I was getting my UEFA licenses and whatever. At the time, if you went to, I've told a wee bits of this before, so sorry if I've borne anyone that's heard it, but if you went to the Red Bulls and you said, I've got a UEFA B, I've got a UEFA C, I've got a UEFA A, whatever, they would guarantee you a rate of pay if they hired you, kind of idea. And you could see it, and sitting over here in Glasgow, you can look at it and think, oh, I'll get my license, that would be this much, and how many hours could you do? And then you're kind of in there and, can you network your way around and can you perform? All the rest of it, laddie ladder. And as then I was kind of working towards like getting licenses and whatever, you just always kind of keep your eyes open and you make accounts with like people that advertise these jobs and all that kind of stuff. And for the longest time, like, cause it probably took me like 2 or 3 years to go from zero to my B. It was just like the Red Bulls. And then like you would get, after a while, it was like Bayern Munich had like some sort of interaction with Dallas, and it would be like, you would almost do like the summer camp type thing, but it was like ran by Bayern Munich, and you would get Bayern Munich training sessions, and like all the people that go there are paying for like the Bayern Munich experience, but it's in conjunction with Dallas and all that kind of jazz. And when I seen that, I was like, well, Bayern Munich, like Germans in football, we all accept are very clever people, and that was the first kind of little thing that I caught a whiff of. And we all know America's got wildly untapped potential in terms of grassroots level. Like it's beyond imagination what can be done there. When you look at grassroots football in Brazil, the UK, like Europe, like how amazing it is and how many world-class players come out of it. As soon as like that geography gets even 30% of that development, you'll see some amazing results. So that was the kind of the first kind of introduction, if you like, add into like what goes on. Because when you're a fan, you're just watching football, you just see people showing up, you don't realize they only play college and then they get drafted, or do you know what, there's now as we talk today, like those kind of structures and systems, it's quite common now in MLS. Those kind of structures now are a bit more common in MLS. But even now, if I was to go on these job pages and have a look around, there's still clubs that like don't really recruit properly for like coaches and for systems and whatever. And they do still rely on the old kind of metric. But the ones that I've noticed, like even if this just gives you a wee bit of insight or whatever, that do recruit really hard is like Seattle. They recruit really hard on coaches for bringing them in for all sorts of seasons and different things and all the rest of it, as well as both the clubs in New York, of course. I think the East Coast is really good for that, Philadelphia and Chicago as well. So I think the untapped potential there is incredible.
Yeah, I think you're also kind of expanding on the point. Like if we could get to 30%, we would be incredible. And we're definitely making progress, but there's a lot more progress to be made, and I know this kind of comes at a time where MLS Next is having its championships, which is the academy levels. So congrats to DC United U16 and Inter Miami U15 are the two that I saw. But we also have the U20 World Cup, or the U20 CONCACAF final today against the Dominican Republic. And I was telling somebody earlier, and I think I tweeted this, and the U.S. had not won a U20 CONCACAF championship before 2017. All these tournaments dating back to 1966. We had never won one. And since 2017, we've won 3 in a row. And I think that shows you're 100% right. A lot of the development was done in college, and now that has shifted to the academies. And that's such a massive thing that these kids are getting at 16, 17, 18, what they used to be getting at 21, 22, 23. And just from a physical, development and a mental development, because soccer is such a mental game, right? Just from a mental development, those extra 5 years are massive for the sport. So, I think a lot of that goes into what we're talking about when we talking about the U.S. being a monster here coming up in the 26 World Cup and beyond. I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of us are so excited about that, and why we could start to see some success for the national team.
I think what the thing that Quinny touched on that really got my cogs going, and like I hadn't really thought about that way, was the fact that there's no relegation. Like initially, us football fans are going to push back on that idea, competition, blah blah blah. But I hadn't really thought about the benefits before, and you brought up like the fact that you can give these kids a chance without the pressure of relegation. Because if you actually think that back to like something like the Premier League, for half the teams there, their whole focus is to stay up because it's monumental going down. And that creates like, you can't give the young kids a run out when you've got to pick up these valuable points, or maybe your whole team's gone forever. You know what I mean? Like the club's on a downward spiral. And that's a really interesting thinking point. And I also think like when you touched on it a little bit, but I thought like when you're talking about the MLS and the franchise model and the no relegation, it like something clicked where I was like, and we see like attacking balls to the wall football every week in, week out in the MLS. And I was kind of putting that down to maybe it's bad defending, maybe it's like they put the DP spots up in attacking players. But I also think that has something to do with it. When you haven't got that to lose, like so much at stake in a relegation, you can really have a go week in, week out, and it lets you like play a bit more freely. And from a spectator standpoint, like we're talking about, that's kind of a good and unique thing in the top echelon of the football world. And maybe there are some benefits, and maybe like, I guess, would you think that we'll start to see, we had the Super League, and the idea of that was really not taken well, and for rightly so. But like, do you think there's things that like European football can start looking at in the MLS in terms of a brand that, or do you just think it's too embedded in Europe where they can't now change it? But like, there's things that the MLS are definitely doing better than in Europe for the product, for the fans, for everything, really. What do you think about that?
I'm definitely the same kind of headspace as you. Like that's kind of what occupied my thoughts when I was kind of going through that, is like, with that kind of loose connection Dallas has with Bayern, the obvious ones that are there in New York to Europe already. And I think as well, Montreal have got a shared ownership with some people in Europe, I think an Italian club and whatever. It's slowly but surely kind of happening. But see, as soon as like, of course we've had Alfonso Davies and a few other guys kind of migrate over recently, but see, as soon as like, we're kind of seeing it now with Bayern. So I'm about to say something, but as I'm about to say it, I actually know that but like, Bayern Munich's academies, there's always like 2 or 3 Americans like knocking around it now. Some guys that are breaking through, some guys have just shipped in from Dallas, and some guys you've never heard of, and you're like, oh, this 16-year-old's just signed for Bayern. Where did he come from? And I think like once they get a few more first team or even Bundesliga first team caliber guys like kind of come out of that kind of networking, you'll then see like Atletico Madrid have got a team in the Indian Super League. They're not above that type of operation. Of course, City are already there, Red Bull are already there, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea now, all these teams with big American owners. Like I think Arsenal are kind of exploiting it now a bit with the whole Austin Trusty thing, but I think eventually they will just go, fuck Europe. We'll go back to America and we'll play with the rules that we love, and we'll just put a lot more of our money there, and we'll be clever, and we'll, these amazing Arsenal Academy kids, let's just send 4 of them to Colorado, and then AC Milan get a team, and then all of a sudden what it could become and what that kind of headspace I was in was, it almost becomes like the playground of Europe, if you know what I mean, where it's like everyone can just like enjoy it from afar, and it's like, oh, that's the Atletico Madrid team. There's 3 wonder kids in there. Maybe 2 of them get minutes, one of them is crap, or, whatever actually develops from that. But then it is like the real armchair fans league, where it's like there's something to tie everyone in some kind of way if it developed that way.
Yeah, and you can building off of that, you could even see how like big teams in Europe with already their fan bases start to tie to franchises in the US, and it already kind of migrates kind of naturally a fan base over that way too. So like you're with a City group, if you're supporting City, now you're naturally going to follow maybe the NYCFC because there's a connection there. You're going to see players back and forth, Dallas and Bayern and so on. So it's like really interesting to see that how that connection is going to build out in the MLS. And I think you're right. I think realistically, like the people, the powers that be in the MLS have realized a really efficient way of branding football into a market that's not necessarily like it's built into, but like the product itself might actually end up being like a better model. You see it in probably not a lot of cricket fans listening to the pod, but like they kind of had to do that in cricket because the old way, the whole systems, the 5-day test idea where it was like long games, draws, it was kind of a boring spectacle for the fans. They realized there's like an organization or someone realized that's not what people want now. We want action, we want thing. And they basically restructured the whole game, made 2020, which is like a one-day off event. There's a winner and a loser. It's simple for fans to follow. And I feel like the MLS, for the MLS audience, are doing that. And I think you touched on some really good points in that video. So yeah, I'd recommend people check that out. And appreciate pushing it out.
So I'm gonna try to play a little devil's advocate here, and I think you guys are right. It's great for development of players, but is being Arsenal's U23 team, for lack of a better word, a better product than just having your own separate team that you sign as many guys as you can? Because if you're Arsenal's U23 team and Arsenal says, here's a kid, we want you to play him, you have to play him, whether he's good or not. You have to give him a run out. You have to see. And then, you're talking about no relegation and how that helps you to be able to play the kids, and there's no consequence for that. It does help with the development of the kid, but when you're throwing like with Seattle, what Seattle did, they don't care about these regular season games. They know they're going to be in the playoffs one way or another. So they throw a completely rotated team out in Toronto. Now they happen to win that game, which doesn't help me make my point, but they throw a completely rotated team out in Toronto, and Toronto's so bad that they lose to them anyway. And it's not fun to watch. Like we all turned it off because, why are we going to sit here and watch guys we've never heard of play for Seattle instead of watching, Nico Ladero and all this other guys? What do you guys think about that?
Can I give you two wee things on that? I'll give you a short one and a big one, right? The short one I would say is these players that would infuriate in this like utopia of MLS in like 20 years or so, where the whole world kind of buys into it as being a neutral league that we can all watch and enjoy or whatever. Those guys replace the crap guys in the squad that are currently there now. The guys that are like, that's when they're a threadbare team when like Kelvin Leardam's playing right wing for LA Galaxy, or these types of things.
Sorry, Kevin.
It's just it phase out those types of guys. The second thing I would say, right, is like if you remember when NYC first like became in as a team, they got guys on loan like Angelino and Yangel Herrera, for example. And see when you've got players like that come into the team that are of the level that are expected to even just knock around like those two guys have, like mid-level European teams or whatever, the players that are then at the team then get a taste of, number one, what that level's like. And then they get to compare themselves against those guys, as do everyone else involved in terms of scouts and coaches and whatever, like, oh, he's actually quicker than that boy, or he's actually taking his chances better than him, whatever. And it also helps you, if you're the American player, if you like coming into that situation, makes you go, well, I'm only 2 yards behind the European guy, to get to that top league. It helps you close that gap in your head of what's possible, I would think anyway.
Yeah, we just had a transfer that kind of epitomizes what it's going to look like with Vrioni coming over from Juventus. He's not going to get a sniff in Juventus, but he's going to be a player that can make an impact in this league. I'm assuming. I haven't seen him play too much. I don't know if either of you know much about his playing style, but that's kind of the thing, I guess, that I'm envisioning, where you get like the guys where he could, instead of going on loan again to a lower European league, they come to the MLS as a priority instead. And like, if all of them kind of tier guys do that, maybe with a view of going back, and maybe it's not, you want to see guys come in and stay in, Chris, like you're saying, but them guys in general, like you say, are going to come into the league make an impact. And hopefully, from an American fan standpoint, you don't want to just be your league to be, I get like a breeding ground for Europe, you know, like a whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, like Quinny's saying it, if you do it right, it can bring the
level.
You can bring the whole level of everything up, bring the whole side up, and like, yeah, maybe if they do it right. But that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking when I'm saying it. Do you know much about Vrioni, Quinny?
I looked at him for coming into this season because I think he had a good loan last year. He did quite well this year, but I would think like Joveljic went to Galaxy after a good year in Austria. So like I would say probably expect a good player.
Yeah, Joveljic is a player. I can't believe he's not been starting really, because they've been poor. Like we spoke about Cabral. I mean, we spoke about Cabral. He's got no goals, no assists. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're sitting on the bench as Dejan Joveljic, and I think he's bagged like 5 or 6 goals in the last month.
Yeah, and
the guy starting ahead of you hasn't scored or assisted all season. Well, you know what I mean? You got to start thinking you're going to get a sniff soon.
Is Joveljic a winger though? Because Cabral's playing like a wing. Isn't Joveljic more worried about Chicharito?
Yeah, but I think they can fit him into the front four. They've played both of them on the pitch at the same time. Maybe plays just behind him instead. But yeah, I guess my overall point is like the attack hasn't been firing on all cylinders. And yeah, I think he'd be looking to get a sniff if I was him anyway.
Yeah, I think he should be in line for some more starts because his form from the bench has been mental good, you know. But like the last couple of times I've seen them, like they have played them on that kind of like wing route. They don't really change the shape, but when they put Joveljic on, they can accept that, you know, they're not going to get him like tracking the fullback back to the 18-yard box or whatever, like you maybe would be like Grancier or Cabral, because that's, you know, they give you legs to do that. But he kind of does come in as a second striker, but they don't really keep the shape. So it's kind of off balance, which is why like the game where Efra came on as well, he's on the other side of the pitch and it's kind of like a 3. They almost became like a 3 up front. Can't remember who it was, but they were you remember the game. They both come off the bench and changed it. It was a big one.
Yeah, I think I've been really disappointed with the Galaxy this year. I went to the opening game of the season. I went there and I watched them against New York, and they looked. I was looking at a team. They looked really well balanced. Like I really like Delgado sitting in there. He really like keeps things ticking. Raveloson too. He's like kind of a powerful ball winner. And then I was looking at that front group of players where you had Chicharito, Joveljic, you had Douglas Costa, Grancer, Efren Alvarez. You know what I mean? You're just like, well, this team's just going to be good. You know, they got 2 good fullbacks and they're just not doing it. It's just not happening for them. So, we'll keep an eye out for that. But
I think one thing early in the season that they were doing really well was playing defense, and they were horrible last year defensively. And they early in the year were one of the better teams in the MLS. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. The Galaxy didn't change really any of their players, didn't really change the system. Why is their defense so good? And it's kind of regressed a little bit back to the mean with the Dallas game and the Minnesota game, giving up 3 goals in the first half in both those games. It's like, this is more the LA Galaxy defense that I know, and this is what held them back last year.
I was going to say on that, I remember I watched the opening game of the season, Galaxy New York, and tying into what you were saying as well, Chris, like I think the biggest miss for them defensively is Koulibaly. Like I thought in the opening game of the season, he was really good. And I think like the defensive form they had, if you check that out, he was kicking ass and taking names and he's been out injured. I bought him and then he got injured. So that's how I know. He's definitely still out. But what did you make of him when you went to the match? Do you remember Koulibaly at all from the game, or did you have an impression from him?
He looked really athletic. Like he was covering ground, and it was him and I think Depoy started that game. And Depoy's a big body, but he didn't have the mobility. But Koulibaly was like kind of covering him really well, like tracking it. You got some pace up front with Tati and that, and he was really covering the ground well. And then like Araujo and Raveloson, just again, they had like really, really good balance on out wide, you know, and the wingers were Costa and all the wingers were getting the ball coming in and they were bombing on and looking really well balanced, dangerous. The 2 centre mids were sitting in. And I thought, yeah, this looks like a well-balanced team. Like they had 2 sort of shield in the back 4, 2 good centre backs. They had Derek Williams to come in, who's a starter for them. So yeah, like at the same time, they shut out New York and I was like, all right, this could be a different year for them because they're going to score goals. And I don't think I don't think it's quite clicked yet, but I think they'll still get the playoffs and maybe they can figure it out. But
Western Conference is tough. There's a lot of good teams out there. They got to be definitely careful for sure. Yeah. And they have the big game against LAFC coming up this next week as well. There aren't a bunch of games. We're recording this on Sunday, so before all of the fun kicks off on Sunday and Monday. So there's not a whole lot for us to get to. We'll talk a little bit about some of the midweek games, I guess. Let's see. Nashi, you said you had watched Philly and Chicago. That was a big win for Chicago, getting off the snide against a really good Philly team. What happened in that game? Can you explain how your team got 3 points?
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolutely massive result. Like, it feels like every game's just a must win now for Chicago. We had Shaqiri back, and it just makes, like, we speak about it all the time, but like one elite player coming back in just makes such a difference. Chicago aren't as terrible as on their day if they can put it together. They're not as terrible as they kind of show out. And like this game, I thought we were just going to get ground down. You know, Philadelphia are just kind of a machine. I thought they'd just use their momentum. They've been on a good run, and Chicago have been obviously terrible. I didn't think we had a sniff in the game, but we actually started with some confidence. It's kind of what we said. I think the psychological impact of Shaqiri coming back just kind of gives them a little boost that they needed after some poor results. The game was close. It wasn't like we were convincing Philadelphia had an off day. We nicked a goal, and then they got a red card, and I thought, that's it, we're home now. And I don't know if you watched the game, but Philadelphia really had the chances to get back in it, even with 10 men. So, but at the end of the day, they got a result. There was a penalty shout that definitely should have been a penalty for Philadelphia in like the 92nd minute. Jonathan Bornstein, you know, like terrible challenge in a box. Stonewall penalty, but they didn't give it. Got away with one. And yeah, big 3 points. And yeah, we'll see how we get on from there. I mean, for Philadelphia, I'm not too worried about them. They weren't poor, you know, they went down a goal, down a man, and still looked half decent. But
are you back on the bandwagon for Chicago yet?
I want to say I am. And it's kind of interesting, like, it's something that talking about the MLS as a whole and the fandom, riding off what Quinny was saying, was there's something nice about the fact that, like, I've adopted Chicago as my team, and they're pretty awful, but there's still that thing of hope where, like, maybe next year they won't be as shit, you know what I mean? Like, this is the parity of the league, like, couple signings. So that is another difference between, like, European football, where when I was at West Ham 10 years ago, and we had players like Jonathan Spector, American prodigy, on in the back four. There was just very little light at the end of the tunnel. So there's enough there to keep me interested, but yeah, I think the light's dimming on them. I think I'm with you, Chris, in the dark. But
well, you'll be happy to know we don't have Predictology this week because there's so many games that we don't have stats for next week yet. But we do have a new Predictology podcast out that's more on the betting side of soccer. And on that podcast, John was telling me about how good the advanced numbers look for Chicago and how they're kind of underperforming, and he expects them to regress to the mean a little bit and kind of make a little bit of a comeback. So he said you'd be happy to hear that.
Nice.
Let's see. We'll talk about Toronto. I watched both the Columbus and the Seattle game. I alluded to it earlier how Seattle played all their subs and still got the win. Toronto, I don't know. They have decided that they don't want to play in the first half, and they've also decided they don't want to play a whole lot of defense, even at home against Columbus and against Seattle's B team, which should both be at least draws for them. They're just not clicking. And Lorenzo Insigne, if he turns this around, is going to earn his money, because this is a disaster right now. And it's a disaster in the back mainly. So maybe Crescido is the more important signing. But Salcedo is garbage. Salcedo got absolutely torched on the second goal. He has him in perfect position and just lets Leo Chu completely around him. So I don't know what Salcedo's doing. He's one of like 3 DP center backs in the league, and he is not living up to that at all. So Toronto, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about Toronto, Quinny?
Well, I'm back Crescito to do pretty well, and I was really interested in listening to. I was listening to your podcast talking about Italians coming into Toronto. Yeah, that was yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Aye, I thought that.
Couple
Sorry.
weeks
I
ago.
just had to double check there before I said it. And yeah, so I was actually, I already thought it was confirmed. And then I was listening to your guys' podcast with, and again, I forget the guest, I'm terribly sorry, but they made it sound like it wasn't quite confirmed. So I was super happy to see him like in the changing room with Insigne over the last week. I went and I sold my rare recently because I was selling lots of cards, but I went and got a limited for £8 because I was like, I need to, I think I don't think he's going to take penalties for Toronto, right? But he is a penalty taker of a centre back. You know, like he's a talisman. He's a proper leader of men, if you like. You know, and he could be a guy. He's not going to lose the ball. See, when he gets on the ball, he's going to just be like a coach on the pitch. You know, and he'll be wanting to play some balls with his left foot down the channel. You know, and he'll want to put his cigar on and like in a good way, but and centre backs at run games like that can get 70 points on the AA, no problem.
Yeah,
Not in a Gonzalo Higuain way, huh?
You think he's gonna slot in a left centre back next sort of where Mavinga's playing now, and I think they'll have Salcedo as kind of a bit of a, like he plays anyway, a bit reckless, a bit of a headless chicken steaming in like man marking, and I can see what you're saying. Cachito just dropping off, getting the ball deep and like sweeping behind him and just spraying balls around because he's a very technical player and like. For the Matrix, I think he's an exciting prospect. He might struggle to get on the penalties with Insigne there, but even still, I think his play style is gonna be real nice. Yeah,
for sure. And if Insigne's out, who knows who takes the penalties? Maybe
Consuelo, the MVP from a couple of years ago.
I can see Insigne just putting in an hour a week and then. Calling it off. I can really see that happening, especially the first year after, playing a season in Europe, coming over. I'm not sure you're going to get 90 out of him because I had his card for Napoli, and even there he would play sort of 60, 70 minutes a lot, especially if they had midweek games. So maybe there's a little bit of meat on the bone there with Crescito and the last minute penalties.
That's gonna be rough if Insigne is only playing 60 minutes. He's got a lot of work to do in 60 minutes to turn that team around. Let's talk quickly Vancouver against LAFC. LAFC came into BC Place, which I've called the toughest place to win in the world, and they failed to win. So Vancouver, hot dog, I called that one correctly as well. Vancouver lost Caicedo for quite a while, which I thought was good for Dahomey. Turns out, watching the broadcast last night, it's probably Ryan Raposo who's the big winner of the Caicedo injury. So interesting there. Raposo's really, really cheap, or at least last time I checked, he was. LAFC rested a bunch of guys as well, prepping for that LA Galaxy El Trafico game next week. Is there like buzz around LA, Nashi, for El Trafico? Have you heard anybody actually talk about it in real life?
It's massive here. Yeah, it actually is. Yeah, no, it actually is a. When I was at the game last week with a few of the Sorare lads, it was, you could tell there's like the marketings around it already. Like they're giving out flyers for El Trafico. Like they know that it's they're trying. They're trying to make it the Classico. And to be fair, like within the city, it is a big thing. Like you'll see it advertised at bars where regularly they won't even show a football game. Like you see the little plaque outside El Trafico. So it is a real rivalry. I know, like sometimes people try to fabricate these things, especially, but yeah, on the ground, it's a big deal for the fans. And there is actually, like, I follow a lot of Galaxy and LAFC sort of media outlets on Twitter and stuff, and there is actually a bit of an edge between the two fan bases. There's like a bit of banter. Oh, yeah. There is a bit of bad blood there. So it's a real rivalry. And I'd actually love to go to the game. You can't get tickets sold out, but that's on the bucket list for sure. But yeah, LAFC, I mean, we'll see if Gareth Bale and Chiellini start. I think Vea was sick. I think any sort of away game where there's a turf field or he just can't be asked that week, he's going to be picking up a little illness or two, but I think he'll be back. And I think Galaxy are going to struggle to contain that team, but it's a massive result for Vancouver, and
Vancouver's white hot. They're white hot,
guys. Yeah, and they've had a couple injuries, like you said, and they've just been consistent.
And this new, I think he's a DP. This new guy that they got, Kubas, is the real deal. He is a destroyer in the middle. He's everywhere. I don't know how he's going to do on the Matrix because he is a defensive mid, but my goodness, like he is absolutely everywhere. They also have Vite, who's been in the doghouse for Vinny Sartini for a while, and he was magical last night. When he came on, that's what kind of unlocked the defense, and they got that late winner.
I wanted to ask Quinny real quick. Like, you've done a lot of coaching. You know, that's a part of a passion that you've got, aside from Sorare, and like you're really into the strategy and the mentality side of the game. With the Cody Cropper situation, we see this with goalkeepers massive on Sorare. Cody Cropper's come into the team. He is effectively a backup goalkeeper, not to put a hat on the man, but he's a backup goalkeeper in the MLS. That's all he ever is, whatever. Thomas Hazel's bright prospect future. He wasn't doing anything wrong. They were, you know, the team was letting him down at the start of the season. He was doing what he can. He didn't deserve to lose his place. He gets injured. Then Cropper comes in and he outperforms what was expected of him, right?
Yep.
The team go on a run and they're performing brilliantly. Hazel's now coming back from injury. You'd assume from like a organization that they see him as the future, or at least a valuable asset for the future. If you're there in a sort of management role, how do you navigate this situation now? Because, you know, you see it a lot. Goalkeeper gets injured, backup comes in, does really well. And in the MLS, I feel like more than other leagues, you see them win the spot, you know? And from a coaching standpoint, from a running team, how would you navigate that kind of situation? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't find it surprising that you think they all end up winning the spot, because that's exactly what you do. You play the goalkeeper that's playing, you know, like there's nothing, you know, like I've had it before. For example, like the last team I coached, we had 3 goalkeepers and we played like, it was a university team. So we had university league football on a Wednesday and then we had league football on a Saturday. And for different reasons, some people could play Wednesday, others couldn't, and some people could play Saturday, others couldn't, whatever. So I had 3 goalkeepers, and at one point in time, none of them were available. And see, when they all came back in, like it's you've got in your head, oh, he's normally number 1 for this, and he's normally number 1 for that, or whatever. But the kind of moral of the story is, like, you know, it's the ones that come back and the ones that are making the saves are the one you play every time. It doesn't matter that, you know, like injury and opportunity is kind of how goalkeepers get on in the game, you know. And if they don't get the opportunity to seize the opportunity, then it's pretty demoralizing, you know. Like, so when guys are injured, if you don't give them the chance to take the spot and hold the spot, then it can kind of kill that little goalkeeper union you've got. But equally, Hazel, whatever we're calling him, if he just gets handed the spot, there's less merit to his position, you know. He needs to kind of earn it back in. And part of him earning it is Cody Cropper dropping it.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. It kind of builds on what we talked before, though, because from like the devil's advocate standpoint, we're seeing like Gaga Slonina become a big valuable asset for the Chicago Fire, potentially on the transfer market. If you're looking at it like in terms of what we said before, like is on-field performance everything in the MLS? Because if I'm like a GM or something, maybe I think, well, Hazel's in the Canadian team set up. He's a young guy. He's got a ceiling that's way higher in terms of an asset for the club. You know what I mean? Do you weigh that into the equation? Obviously in Europe, I think I agree with you. Like whoever's performing right here, right now, you stick with. But I wonder whether these teams kind of weigh that decision into the equation, like future value ceiling, because you don't want Cropper running out for the season. At the end of it, Hazel's thinking, well, I'm not getting a look in here, you know, forcing a move or something. You know what I mean? It's a little different in the MLS. Like, yeah.
I think, especially if you want to have, and again, I've never coached at MLS level or whatever and handled transfer speculation from Real Madrid for a goalkeeper and all that caper. But I think with Slonina becomes a bit different because he is now seen as an asset. And if you start dropping him on injury or anything like that, then you've got an asset that might be devalued on perception. And obviously that's something I've never dealt with, so I can't speak on it. But in general, like, I do feel that, like, because goalkeepers like always train together. Goalkeepers are like, let's say, it's always referred to as the goalkeepers union. And like, again, like one of the main reasons it's referred to like that is because they're like a little club within the squad. If you like, you know, the coach and the 3 guys, they spend the most time together and whatever. And as much as they're all supportive of each other and that kind of thing, it's normally the way it goes. There is like, yeah, it depends how you are as a coach. Like for me, it's the best player plays kind of idea. And I suspect, you know, Vancouver's not too different. You know, I always pronounce his names wrong, but, you know, Vanny. So
Sartini, yeah.
Saranitini, I don't know. He's very well renowned as like a coach's coach, if you know what I mean. He's like a training field guy, you know. So I think his thing is going to be Cody Cropper has to drop the ball and then Hassel's opportunity to pick it up, kind of idea. The opportunities came to Cropper, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I mean, the other interesting thing with this scenario is they traded Maxi Crepeau away to give Hassel this spot. You know, like they realized that Hassel was good enough to play in this league, and they trade Crepeau away, who is one of the better goalkeepers in the league, just to give him this spot. And now Cropper kind of takes it, and you have the same thing kind of going on in Minnesota as well with Dane and Tyler Miller. Even dating back to last year, Dane played the first 4 games, dropped it. Tyler took it. And then Tyler got COVID and Dane took it back, and Dane hasn't given it back. So you got Miami doing the same thing. Drake Callender is now in there. And is he going to keep that spot? Don't even look at the Toronto goalkeeper situation. That's a mess. They've both dropped the ball so many times that they might be fielding me out there next week.
I think as like a Sorare fan and a Hazel owner, I don't want to hear like perform, you know, Cropper's got a shot. And when he first came in, I saw people buying him up, and I was thinking to myself, I don't think that's the smartest move on Sorare. But as a football fan, I'm 100% with Quinny. Like, take Sorare out of it. I think if the guy, absolute credit to Cody Cropper coming in, performing he might have even thought in his head, like, I don't even know if like I'm going to be able to stay in the team. You know, like he might not have known where he's at, but he's come in and he's actually performed. And that's what you want to see, them kind of stories in football. So, yeah, fair play to him. But yeah, I know there's a lot of people interested in that sort of goalkeeper situation right now.
Do you want to know Cody Cropper's secret to success? Every time he gets a shutout, he buys everyone donuts in the locker room. So they all want to get him a shutout. Let's move on here. We've got Cincy versus NYCFC, which was a weird game in the midweek. Quinny, you have some thoughts about that one?
I was going to say, I was thinking earlier we were talking about TFC. I didn't actually really catch much MLS this game week, but I caught like a good portion of that game. Certainly, you know, I caught the extended highlights afterwards because it was like we've been on for ages. It was about half an hour the cut I caught, you know, with 4 goals and all the disalloweds and everything else. It was a pandemonium. Cincinnati have been a real surprise, and it's funny, right? Because like, seeing last year, I don't know how well you guys will remember this, but last year Cincinnati, like on paper, some of their Sorare cards were like decent options, but they were so terrible. And it's kind of like, especially for me, I'm making videos and stuff. I'm like, oh, well, I like Matarita because I won him and whatever, you know. Yeah. It's like Matarita and Alan Cruz has got some wee spots, and Brenner has all the promise in the world and this, that, and the other thing. But they appoint the guy from Philly, they bring in the coach as well, you know, so they've got the front room, back room kind of thing on the go. And like, I'm wildly surprised at how quickly it's paid off for them. Like this year, they've been brilliant, eh?
They've been great. And you're talking about Brenner too. He's not even had a good start to the season, but now watch out. Like, he put the ball in the back of the net 5 times. 2 of them were disallowed, but he still scored 5 times against NYCFC, which is one of the best defenses in the league. So if he gets hot, I mean, they've got Vasquez, who came out of nowhere for me at least, and Lucho Acosta. That's a dangerous front 3 to try to contend with. And the question, the knock on Cincy has always been defense. And it looks like they've got at least a little bit of an organization now with bringing in the Philly coach to kind of get things straightened out. So definitely an interesting one to watch. From NYCFC's perspective, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about they've got a lot of changes coming. Like, Tati obviously has all the transfer rumors. You've been all over that. Ronnie Dyla leaves to Standard Liège in Belgium. Where is this club? Like, are they still elite? Are they, you know, just trying to tread water? Like, where are we right now?
I think Ronnie Dyla's a big personality, and I think in MLS, coaches with a big personality carry like a lot of the kind of momentum a team can generate. Like, you just need to look at like Bruce Arena, for example. He's like the kind of pinnacle of that, you know. But there's other coaches around MLS, the storied ones that like Peter Vermees at like Kansas. You know, these guys that are like real coaches that really run the club and can really get a team moving in a direction. And you know, the new guy that's come in, Cushing, I don't know him from Adam. He's only been there 2 minutes. It's hard to judge him at this point, you know. But Ronnie Dyla leaving, there'll definitely be like a little like personality vacuum, I would imagine, like in that changing room and on the training ground, at least for like until it becomes a new normal again. You know, it's a new face there, it's a new regime, it's a new kind of you know, routine and all that kind of stuff. is the team still elite? I think it's been quite unfortunate. Dyla leaving has coincided with Thiago Martins getting injured, as well as Keaton Parks going MIA over the last month or so as well. Two big parts. So I think it might be one of those ones, maybe a storm in a teacup. And once like Martins is back in particular, like I think there'll be a big change in stability.
Does that change at all if Tati leaves?
I don't think so, because I think Tati, especially like as much as he's amazing or whatever, he's not Maxi Morales. He's not the one playing the balls and finding, and he does do that. Don't get me wrong, but he's not like the guy that does it. You know, he's not Carlos Healing for the team. He's more the bookser. You know, and you know that kind of guy leaving, I think, is less disruptive than the Maxi Morales disappearing.
Do you have any thoughts on where he will or where he should go? You've probably watched a lot more of him than most. Do you have any thoughts? Like, what's the good step in his career right now?
Definitely because of what we were speaking about before coming on camera, in terms of my opinion of him prior to selling him like a year ago or so. He definitely sees himself going to like a top club in Europe, like no matter what. It might not be a top league, but he sees himself going to Europe and being Tati Castellanos and, playing for Benfica or Ajax or whatever he goes to. I don't think he goes to like Brentford or Brighton or anywhere like that. I don't think he goes to maybe he would go to West Ham because it's in London. That's a little bit different. But, I think he only goes somewhere that has a level of prestige.
West Ham's not a big club.
I saw him double thinking.
What are we talking about?
I'll put a Celtic shirt on just for him, and then he comes out firing at the hammers.
He says West Ham's no good.
I say West Ham like that all the time because see in my world, West Ham, Benfica, and Galatasaray and Fenerbahce get linked to everyone in Europe. Like they get linked to everyone. So I say West Ham in that context, no other context.
All right. We'll let you off.
Apologise.
Carry on.
So yeah, it's just because, and I think there was links for them as well. So I think River Plate is the best move for him, but I don't think he wants. I think same as Barco. Barco didn't really want to go back to Argentina, but Argentina was the only offer that kind of came for Barco, and he was kind of like, well, Atlanta want me out pretty bad, and it's not too bad to go there and whatever. But Castellanos, I think he'll just stay at NYC if he can't get to Europe. To be quite honest, maybe he would go to River. To maybe if he sees Enzo going to Benfica and obviously Alvarez going to City himself. Maybe, but I think he really fancies himself going to like Benfica, but or a team of prestige.
Yeah, we were speaking before. Like you was giving me a bit of insight. I didn't know that about him, but on a personality level, he sounds like he really fancies himself. He's got that arrogance. He's got that Dimitar Berbatov, and I love that. And I think that helps, especially as an attacking player. You need that mental resilience. You need to just believe you're the man. But you've seen more of him from like a talent standpoint. Do you think them two things can align where he can make it at the top of the game? Has he got that ceiling? Because obviously he's put numbers in the MLS, but it's kind of still hard to gauge that, without seeing someone week in, week out. Yeah,
no, they're definitely right. And I think like a lot of the raw promise that I thought he wouldn't deliver on is, I make you right. I think like along with that kind of arrogance and whatever that he does, and I don't know the guy, and I'm inferring all of my opinion on him from social media and from watching him play football, and it's things like when you see the training photos and there's like 5 of them, they're like, yeah, we won 7-a-side today or whatever. He's at the end of the row and he's got his shorts rolled all the way up, like all the way up to like underneath his balls. And he's standing there like tensing his thighs and all that. And he's like, yeah, and you're like, mate, you just fancy yourself a little bit too much, That's
he plays like that too. Yeah, I always can find Tati because he's the one with the short shorts.
Yeah, so that's where a lot of my perception comes from, is a lot of this body language and reading between the lines and just kind of seeing what's going on with him. But that married with talent, Berbatov style, like it can work. And I think like we've seen it all too often from MLS going into Europe, is like it really depends on the landing spot. Like Pepe going to Augsburg, I can see you get the hat on today as well, which is the Celtic one, which is lovely. Was not a good landing spot for him at all. I think Busio actually worked out kind of well. It was just too crap of a team, but he played all the time and he played pretty well, and that's kind of good enough to get going, really. So I think the landing spot is quite crucial when coming from MLS. I think Almiron suffered greatly going to Newcastle, and like the guy that signed him not having a fucking clue where to play him, so going into a blind situation where the manager doesn't know you or whatever is probably not advantageous either.
Chris, you have I've seen some links for Busio. Do you have any sort of idea where he might end up this coming season? I saw a vague Ajax link that got me got me tingling a little bit, but it didn't seem like there was too much weight behind it. But I think he can kick on, like Quinny said. I think he's done enough this year to show that he belongs there. And like, I'm really looking forward to seeing his development, but I don't know what his next move is either.
I have no clue what his next move is either, but I know it is very important because he is very much right on the fringe of the U.S. national team. So if he wants to play in the World Cup, or even just be on the plane, not even play, if he wants to make the roster, he's going to have a pretty good fall season here and leading up to the World Cup. So yeah, I don't know where that is, but he's definitely got a lot of pressure on him because the midfield for the U.S. is loaded. There's a ton of guys, and Luca De La Torre has kind of taken his chance. We were talking about earlier, taking your chance, and Luca's kind of taken that chance in the last window here. And I think he's probably now that backup midfielder. So we'll have to see. I mean, Busio's super talented, but I would love to see where he lands.
What would you think about him staying at Venezia?
In Serie B?
Maybe he writes off this World Cup. You know, what chances he got of really starting at it, you know, with McKennie and Adams and
he's definitely not going to start.
You know, maybe he writes this World Cup off, settles in, like really becomes like the main guy in the team, you know, because moving around all the time, like fair enough, like you can go, you know, I think Brian Reynolds has kind of suffered from that a little bit, going to Roma, going here on loan, going there on loan. That can be terrible. You know, sometimes it is good to just knuckle in and get some roots in. And
we had Tom on the podcast, and he was talking about Hoppy, and he was kind of alluding to he thinks he should have stayed and just took that season where he'd bang a load of goals in, probably start every game, and just like that experience of playing regularly in Europe, in the setup out there, getting the confidence up, might have served him better than going to Mallorca and being in a terrible team and still barely getting a sniff, you know. So yeah, maybe that's something. Yeah, maybe I think you might be right there, but agents.
That's tough though. That's tough to just write off a full World Cup. You know, that's every player's dream. Even if you don't play, like to be in that locker room and to be like on the plane and in that whole experience.
12, you know, I mean, there's plenty of time. You know, he's still got many.
You never know. We didn't qualify for the last one, so you never know. You never know. We do host the next one, so I guess we already qualified for that. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. Very interesting to see where he actually ends up for sure. But yeah, I mean, Serie B, if he does stay there, he has to dominate. He has to absolutely dominate that team in that league.
Yeah. But I'd say no move is maybe better than any move in some cases. If it is just like, oh, this other crap team in the Serie A wants you now. Okay, I'll go be in that crap midfield and start from scratch and get to know the guys and get to know the manager and relocate again and
then get relegated at the end of the year.
And then get relegated again. Why bother?
Yeah, exactly. It's better to go up than down, I think.
Have you guys had, I've seen they've released some new MLS cards this week, talking to youngsters. Thiago Almeida has finally made it. Gould, someone you, Chris, who've been salivating over for a while.
The Scottish Messi.
Are you looking to pick any of them up?
Oh, I want a Gould. I don't even know if I'll play him. Like, he's not been very good this year, to be quite frank. But I mean, he's at least by his standards. But man, I want one. He was so good last year and so electric that I just wanted one so badly, and I couldn't get one. So now it's just going to be an impulse buy. There was one other guy, and I cannot remember for the life of me who it was that I really wanted that didn't have a card, and I was like, why doesn't he have a card this year? But yeah, it was, and maybe it was Areola from Dallas. So I wanted a Dallas card instead of the DC card. I don't know.
I don't think his card is like, yeah, no, that rings a bell for me. Areola. I think he's a forward, or is his position changed? So I was doing lineup builder videos, and he comes up in Sorare data as maybe a midfielder or something. I can't remember. It's a funny one, but you can see him on Sorare data with his Dallas shirt. I can't remember. I may be losing my mind. Maybe he doesn't have a card.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, another little nuance that I noticed relevant to Sorare was, you see the Liverpool players and the Napoli players lose their 5%. Insigne has kept it in my gallery. So I think because he's in now part of the MLS.
Alert so rare.
So I'm going to double
the 22 season.
I'm going to double check that right now, so I don't have egg on my face. But I checked a couple of days ago because there was kind of that hedge. I talked to Bob Flynn about Orange Flyer, and he was saying about buying one, and I was saying to him that might be like a huge edge if he keeps that like 13% or whatever till the end of the season.
Alert so rare. Nashi is cheating.
Yeah, and I think like for those out there who are maybe on the cusp, that's something to pay attention to, because obviously that makes a massive difference, because they were already jacked up because they didn't have any other cards, you know. So I think my one's like 13%, which is almost halfway to a super rare. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a hack there. I don't know, but maybe that's something amazing to look out for in other leagues too, where, you know, I just picked up a Pablo who's gone to Flamengo, and he was on like 10%, and I'm wondering if that's going to last a while as well. So maybe there's a little
thing. I think that's legit, because like, you know, it's one season after, so the Insignia cards are what, 20 to 21 cards.
21 mine is, yeah. It's still on the 12.5%, so that's good.
Then this is the 2022 MLS season, so it's still the season after that was issued. You know, so that's a lovely loophole.
Everyone will be rushing to the market. Yeah, make sure you. Yeah, because 5%. So that's almost a super rare. Like when some of them are like 12, 13%. So yeah, I'm hoping he starts banging in goals. I need to start winning some awards.
So speaking of buying players, I have a little bit of a problem here, because I have been upgrading my gallery a little bit, and I'm trying to find defenders, and I just going through the league, and I'm not finding any like really, really super elite defenders that I can be like, this guy's going to bang me 70s and 80s all the time. Is there anybody that I should be looking at for defenders in the MLS that either that you think can get to that 70, 80 type average, or am I just missing somebody?
Yaimar.
Yeah, I mean, he's the standout. He's been the standout guy in terms of like
the closest thing to it, really, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you're playing America, I'd look elsewhere. You know, I'd look South America, I'd look Mexico even. Like, just because we know the thing we love about the MLS is just goals galore. But if you're a defender, it's not quite set up. Yeah. I mean, Yaimar's a choice. There was that guy from San Jose. Is it Nathan?
Nathan, yeah.
He had some unreal peaks. Like, I don't know how he's been getting on lately, actually. But I remember there was buzz about him coming on, and we spoke about him because he was banging out hundreds for fun, like in a little stretch last year. But yeah, you might have to go a bit south, mate. You might go south of the border. And
I do think Jack Mayer and John Tolkien are high ceiling players that are both like, you know, they're not quite there yet for the scores you're after, but price and promise is there.
Tolkien's a really interesting one, because he is kind of pushing on the door of that US team. And he's U23 for a long time. So if you want to build a U23 type of team.
I was listening to a podcast like a year and a half ago or something. I can't remember where it was, but there was somebody talking from the Red Bulls organization or whatever. And they were talking about Caden Clark coming through at the time. It was when he'd kind of debuted and kind of burst onto the scene. And somebody was getting interviewed from Red Bull, and they were saying like, yeah, we put Caden Clark right alongside Tyler Adams. Like, he's definitely going to make it. He's like elite. And then like the interview kind of goes on or whatever. And they're like, yeah, the main guys that we've brought through is like Tyler Adams. Who did I just say there again? Sorry, Tyler Adams, Caden Clark. And John Tolkien. Those three guys are all on the same level. And it was all kind of said like, just as a kind of throwaway comment, like those three guys are on the same level. And this is like a year and a half ago. And I've just kind of watched out for him ever since. I've only recently just got his card. But he plays all across the back four, can play all across midfield, kind of technically as well. And see, like modern football, especially like Red Bull football, that is like, that's minerals, you know, that's proper the stuff that these scouting teams, like, you know, Salzburgs and Ajaxes and Benficas, that's the sort of stuff that they're all looking for, is like that game knowledge of you can slot in at left back and right back and not be lost in the pitch and not get out of place and make mistakes and whatever.
So does he have high ceiling? Does he have enough consistency in his hairstyle for you?
That's probably a good thing that it's not consistent.
That was one thing Tom was talking about. He was going to start a show where they just talk about John Tolkien's hairstyle.
That'd be a good show.
Love that. Do you had something, Nashi?
No, I was just saying about Tolkien. Like he's kind of like he doesn't stand out when you watch him, but he's like got everything at the same time. Like you're saying, like he's like aggressive. You know what I mean? He's not going to let you down. He's like, I mean, this is maybe a bit of a stretch, but like someone like you see in Europe, like a Kimmich, you know, like they just can kind of do everything simple. They're not going to let you down. they're going to perform. Obviously, there's a massive gap there, but like he's like one of them kind of guys for me. You know, like he's not having a day off ever. You know what I mean? You know what you're going to get. He's good enough, and he's kind of not really a liability, which is what you want along the back four and in your team in general. So yeah, I like him as a player. I don't know how that translates on Sorare though. Them kind of guys.
Maybe goes to Salzburg next year to replace Soleil when he goes to Torino.
Yeah. Have you? So you said you moved out a little bit from the MLS, Quinny, a couple months ago. What's your kind of strategy with the MLS side of it now? Are you going to look into completely move out, or are you going to sort of get back in and start planning for next year, or are you going all Europe? Like, where's your gallery kind of looking like?
So MLS, when it first came on for me, was my like it is for everyone else really who's on the platform. It was my how to beat the European tactic. You know, like I'm going to get Johnny Russell, I'm going to get Joseph, and you know this one and that one, and I don't need to get. So bearing in mind when I was picking up MLS cards, the options in Europe weren't as abundant, and subsequently because of the bottleneck on that, they were, you know, like in relative terms as things have went on, they were more expensive at the time because there was like less of them. There was only Vanaken, and there was only like Depay, and there was only a few like real keystone cards. So that's what it was for me. It was kind of like a facilitator or a gateway, if you like. And over the first kind of year or so of playing, I just kind of traded in and out of a lot of different cards. But then, like you said, at the very beginning of this year, when it was kind of in that pre-season bubble, it's one of these things where I've been putting myself in check almost all of this year and kind of thinking to myself at different intervals is like, there's no point in having experience if you never cash it in, you know? And it was like the pre-season kind of hype, and I'm looking at guys, I'm like, Johnny Russell, fucking half a coin. At the time, that's like, it was, ETH was like not far off all-time high. It was on its way down, but it wasn't far away from it. And half an ETH was like a lot of money. And it just, you know, so I just kind of cashed in some experience, if you like, in that sense. And I just thought, oh, I don't need them now. It's like, yeah, it's a great price. And yeah, I might pay more tomorrow, but I might not pay more tomorrow. Who knows? Blah, blah, blah. And so because I've kind of had a clean slate, when I've come back into it, I've made it much more deliberate. So I've got a little kind of Red Bull contingent. I've got quite a big NYC. If you look at all my NYC rares, with the exception of Parks, they're all squads. They're all squad numbers so far, and Johnson, because that's a one-of, and IAK buys every one-of NYC card and a few other different brands, so they can be expensive. And I've still got Wanyama, I've still got Legit, and otherwise, I want to get like gold. I'll probably get a Danny Wilson back in. I've still got a Stuart Finlay big head I can't get rid of. And yeah, just try and make it a wee bit more deliberate. I still will be watching MLS as much as possible, but like Atlanta and Galaxy, I'll probably need to cut out of my life for a while. I was watching those games for the last 2 years, like religiously, along with I watched quite a bit of Seattle over my time, because that's like where my family's from. Their kind of hometown club. They don't care about soccer or football. Back in before NYC, I used to watch Seattle a bit more. So that basically for this year, at least, I'm just going to be focusing on New York teams and some Scottish players and one.
So
Legit.
You've got Matarrita and Tinnerholm, both of whom had long-term injuries, and I'm assuming you picked them up while they were injured. Is that part of your strategy to pick up guys that are, you know, injured or not playing?
Actually, I won the Matarrita for finishing first in in Division 3. Back then, used to get a super rare and a star rare for winning the division. So the Matarrita is like a little keepsake, even though he's injured and he's a pain in the ass. He's never been valuable enough to sell. He's always worth nothing, like basically. But I think his upside is huge. Like he takes set pieces for Cincy. Last time he played anyway, different manager now, so who knows? But upside's huge. And Tinnerholm, like, yeah, it's a new season card. He just came back from injury tonight. We are recording. He's in the lineup, starting 11 against Atlanta. So hopefully the Tinnerholm is an injury play, and the Matarrita is just a forever card at this stage.
What's your have you got like a European strategy? I see you got a lot of the Celtic boys lined up. Are you just all in on your home team there?
Yeah, basically. So again, when I was selling those cards off and a few other bits and pieces, like I was trying to prepare if Celtic came on, like, you know, what cards would I want to get? And I had like priority list and all the rest of it, blah, 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 whatever. The main card was the unique McGregor, which I got, and I still, every day I look at it, I cannot believe I own it. I cannot believe I got it for under 2 ETH also, you know, which is a crime in itself, you know, it's robbery. But So as soon as I got that, it then puts all sorts of pressure on me. I can't have that card and it's a bit of a cliche, a Sorare cliche, but I can't not surround it then with the best things available. You know, like I have to burn bridges, bend over backwards to then decorate that with the things that will make it worth having. So I've kind of, in the immediate to short term, I've kind of forced myself into like, that's just, if I don't do that, then I'm absolutely just hemorrhaging opportunity out of my backside, you know. But outside of that, I think I've tried to keep a bit of a route in Europe with like some CFG guys and some ex-Celtic players and some Red Bull Leipzig players and a few other bits and bobs. But I think mainly with Europe this year, like I'll have a lot more fun outside of what I do with Celtic and whatever with limiteds this year. I went and picked up a bunch of what I think are a bit more kind of upmarket European limiteds, and that's off the back of selling some of those guys in rares and just kind of being at the point of I'm not going to buy back into those guys on rares, so I'm going to get them at limited now while Eve's down and it's off-season Europe and there's a wee bit of negative. Oh, when I bought them anyway, there's maybe a wee bit of negative sentiment or maybe a wee bit of malaise in the market of, you know, Eve's down and what's going on and all that crap. So
it's tough. Like, I mean, I think to bring it back to the MLS, what we were talking about earlier is like, obviously I'm a West Ham fan and I've collected on Sorare, I've collected a few of the West Ham boys. Obviously Declan Rice is a must, but realistically with Celtic, I guess you have the luxury where you know they're going to do well in the game as well as thing. And I've been doing it because Chicago's like my MLS team now. It's been kind of nice because I've been picking up a bunch of their players, but the difference between me picking the West Ham ones up and the Chicago ones up, I've got like pick up a couple of Shakiris and that and Mueller. There is still that hope, like we said earlier, the next year, in the next couple of years, that they might actually be half decent. They might be cards that come good. Whereas like with the West Ham ones, it's a bit of a stretch to think that like, you know, like Thomas Souček's going to turn into like Kimmich. You know what I mean? Like it's a... Well,
before you go badmouthing Thomas Souček, let me tell you something. He has been linked in the last week to RB Leipzig to be replacing a lot of these midfielders that go out. So like Souček and a team like Leipzig could be fun, you know. So I wouldn't go poor.
So what you're saying is the player is worthless elsewhere or worthless at West Ham, but if he moves elsewhere, he's perfectly fine.
He's got to step up in him. He can go above West Ham.
I feel like I've got to defend the boys a bit. Like I feel like West Ham are like the quintessential, like this, if he goes there, he's dead. Like on every podcast I listen to, like, it's like, yeah, but he's been linked to West Ham, so we can't put any money into this guy. You know what I mean? They get like so disrespected, but I mean, I get it. I'm kind of shitting.
I mean, you just say that you were collecting West Ham cards knowing that they wouldn't be any good on Sorare?
Yeah, no, to be fair, no, it's a fair point. And like my Gakpo is my like sort of flagship card, my Gakpo Super. And like it's the same. You see him getting linked to Leeds. And for him, like, I mean, I don't think it'll be a good move this year because he's had such a good season. He's in the national setup in the World Cup. I don't think he will go. But you think like, you forget in Sorare land that like that's a reasonable move for him. You know what I mean? Like if he's going Premier League, like if Leeds improve, they're putting money into the club. Like Leeds are a massive, like probably a lot of the American audience. Leeds are a massive club. Like historically, like they're a huge club. Like it's not like a dead move, but in Sorare land, you're like, why would Cody Gakpo go to fucking Leeds? You know what I mean? Like,
they were drawing more in League One than MLS teams draw. Most MLS teams draw for normal regular season games. Like they were drawing 30K in League One. It's wild.
Yeah, but we all get skewed. We all get things. I'm praying Gakpo stays, but
I think there's an overall maybe overpronounced negative kind of sentiment towards just Premier League players on Sorare because it is a very dog-eat-dog league, and I think it's maybe I think too many people think that there's not enough consistency in selection with Premier League teams, and we've kind of had that with the cards because most of the cards that we've got are transfers. So again, like we spoke about earlier in the show, like situation, we're coming in somewhere fresh, got to know new people, got to get a new house, got to get to know everyone. And yeah, that's maybe the case for more often than not. But I think we'll probably notice this when the Prem, if and when or whatever. But Premier League cards can be like, you know, moving to West Ham could be good, but it's just not going to be good for 38 games. It'll be good for 10. Depends on the player and, you know, who they are and what they're about.
I mean, yeah, I mean, Jared Bowen's not cheap actually, but
Bowen's good.
if you look at his scores for a champ Europe striker, it's not embarrassing, you know what I mean? Like, and we can definitely improve. Like, there's room there, and Liverpool players do all right in the Prem, you know what I mean? Like,
Liverpool players do all right,
eh? I mean, looking forward, do you think the Prem's coming? Like, it's weird that the logos are changed. I don't know what to make of that, but what's your sort of gut feeling there?
I wasn't too sure all the logos were there anyway, to be quite honest. Like, I see when people were, I think the Chelsea one was there because I think also we've had Havertz and Werner and look, a few players have went there. So I think if people say the Chelsea one's changed, I believe them. But I'm quite sure, I wouldn't be surprised if not all of them were there in the first place anyway. But what I'm waiting to see is, like, I remember like Troy, you know, the French team, or Troyes, or whatever they're called. Mm-hmm. On Sorare, so when you go to like the fixtures and whatever, or even actually, let's just check on the site. They didn't have a badge. They just had this like grey shield, as you've probably seen before on the site. And it's just like a nondescript logo for some teams. I think it's maybe 2 things. I'll check this before I say it. So Troyes, yeah. Yeah, so they still don't have a logo at all. So I wasn't sure maybe if so for anyone at home that's listening to this, it's TROYES if you put it in Sorare. They don't have a club logo at all. One thing I maybe thought was maybe they're just reformatting like the teams with no logos from it being the grey shield to being like that little thing. But Troyes or Troy still have the little grey shield thing. They don't have the same thing that like Chelsea and Man United do now. So. Actually,
now I'm looking. I just clicked on my Ogbonna West Ham card, and all the Premier League teams no longer have that weird cartoony thing. They're the grey shield too. So maybe you're onto something there.
What is it?
Yeah, it's gone. So the plot thickens anyway. Is there?
So speaking of West Ham, real quick, we're just gonna plug Nellis a little bit. You're going to the Sorare meetup thing, right, Quinny?
Yes, I am.
Are we?
Should be good.
Are
fun.
We going to the West Ham City game?
If that's on that weekend, I'd be right up for it. I think we're up for going to a game. I'm bringing my wife with me, so she'll be there for the party as well. But I'd be right up for it. I think it might be. Yeah, I think we need to start looking at getting tickets sooner rather than later because these things sell out quite quickly.
I think
I'm up for it for sure.
Saturday there was Fulham is hosting Liverpool, and then Sunday West Ham hosts City.
I'd love to get to a Crystal Palace game if they're playing at all, but I'm not sure if they are.
I didn't check Palace yet. But
Palace West Ham. I'd like to go there, London.
If you're listening and you want to run into a bunch of Sorare celebrities, head to London in the beginning of August. Quinny will be there and Nellis will be there, so that's all you need to know.
Yeah, let us know where they are.
Do you have anything else to add? Anything else you want to go over there, Nashi?
No, mate, that was a great chat. Yeah, really, we got in the weeds there. I don't know how long we've been going, but it might be time to wrap it up. I got to sweat Araujo. I need a goal against Quinny's boys, so get me a.
It's all right. They leaked everything last week, so they're not in good form.
Yeah, 0-0 right now. But yeah, we'll see. But no, that was great chat.
No. Let's keep it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Quinny. Appreciate the time. Always up for a chat if you ever want to come back on.
A pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. It's a long time listener, first time caller. The problem with doing content, going on other people's is you then, I'll listen to it back, but it's not quite the same. Like you guys, is my Monday morning. You know, when I'm leaving the house, I know you guys are out on a Monday morning now for the last like at least 6 weeks or so. So my Monday morning now I need to listen to myself a little bit, which I don't always enjoy, but
I can't do it. I can't listen to it back. I don't know. I still haven't got to that stage yet where I can sort of listen to myself, but
that's good because you don't see all the parts that I throw in after of us trashing West Ham. So it's good that you don't listen back. But we appreciate all the time, Quinny. Everybody have a good 4th of July weekend, even if you are not in the States. Happy Bastille Day next week, I think, for the French people out there. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Appreciate it, guys.
Cheers.